Hello students, today we are going to compare Pamela and Pride and Prejudice. So in very short we are going to do comparative study. So what's the story of Pamela? Here first of all we'll see the two things we are going to focus. First is that's the setting, and second thing is characters, major characters, right? So this is the novel Pamela by Samuel Richardson, and that's two places are there, Lincolnshire and Bedfordshire. These are the two places which are depicted in the novel Pamela, and here and that is both the um, places are situated in London, right? And in this story, there we are going to meet two families, B family and Andrews, right? Andrews family. So who are in B family? So that is senior lady B, right? And she is the mother, and she has two children. Lady first is senior uh, married daughter, Lady Davis. She is daughter of Lady B, and she is married, that's why she is Lady Davis. And number two, Mr. B, right? Mr. B, that's a son, and she is daughter, right? So this is the first family. Second, here we are going to in um second family is that she is Andrews family. Who are in Andrews family? John Andrews and Elizabeth Andrews, husband wife, and they have, that's a one daughter, Pamela Andrews, right? So these are the two families, and places are Lincolnshire and Bedfordshire. And in Lincolnshire there is housewife's name is Mrs. Jukes, and in Bedfordshire that's a housewife that's a yeah, so that's a housekeeper, that's a Mrs. Jarvis, not housewife, Miss housekeeper. So this is Mrs. Jukes, she works in Lincolnshire, and Mrs. Jarvis works in Bedfordshire. One more family we are going to meet, that's a Miss Godwin, and Miss Godwin is a young daughter, and her mother's name is Sally Godfrey, right? So these are the characters we are going to meet, and that's a one more character which is mentioned here, upper one, that is Nen, or uh, what is N. She knows from both the names, and so this is one more character, and last one is Mr. Williams, junior pastor, right? These are the major character. What's the story we are going to discuss? Okay, so Pamela by Richard Samuel Richardson, sorry. Pamela by Samuel Richardson, right? And this is Pamela is just 15-year-old girl, right? And she is a heroine or female female protagonist. Now next one is Mr. B, 20 years old, right? 20 years, and he is just 20 years, and he is son of Mrs. Lady B, right? What happened in this story? Mr. B, after when a novel opens, we meet Lady B. She is on the bed, and she uh, takes promise from Mr. B that don't throw any servant from the home, especially Pamela, because she was very helpful to Lady B, and she took care of Lady B, and that's why Lady B loves Pamela. She's just 15 years old girl, and she says that never expel this girl, keep always, because she needs have good job and safe job. So Mr. B says okay. He promises to mother, but then Lady B dies. Then for some time Mr. B is good to Pamela, but later on he tries to take physical advancements of Pamela. I'm just telling you very short story that Pamela is not at all ready to compromise with her character. She does not want to choose her chastity, and that's why she, in right from beginning, she opposes it. So Mr. B tries to take advantage of her physical advantage, her from Pamela. So Pamela says that no, I am not ready to with that kind of girl, and this way story moves. What happened? But one day that she was changing her clothes, and then Mr. B hides himself in a almirah, and when she was changing her clothes, and he comes out, so she becomes unconscious, and that day it was limit. He crosses the limit, because many a time while going coming and doing work, so he sometime he touches and sometime he kisses, and she gets hurt, but she could not do anything. But it was height when he hides himself in an almirah, and he comes out, and then she feels cheated, she feels she gets hurt, and then that is why she shares this matter with housekeeper, Mrs. Jukes. So Mrs. Jukes is a senior lady, and she takes care of Pamela. Then onwards she takes much care of Pamela. But then it was height. Then one day Pamela decides to leave for her parents. So she says that no, I don't want to continue. And Mr. B knows that her financial condition is not good. However, Pamela's father had been a school teacher, but because of some circumstances, he had to leave job, and they live in a village. But that does not mean that she compromises with her character. So she says that I will leave, and many a times she tries to leave home, but she could not. So one day she leaves home, and then on the way she has to face bulls, and she frightens, and she comes back. And as she comes back, then she what happened, everything, right? This is the epistolary novel, right? An epistolary novel epistolary novel means everything moves, the plot moves with the help of letters. So who writes letters? Pamela writes letters to her parents, right? And where we come to know that parents, mother is very simple. Pamela's mother, Elizabeth Andrews, is a very simple lady. Father response is always, mother is cool and simple kind of lady. So she writes that after death of Lady B, i am uh, I am in very pathetic situation, because Mr. B tries to attack on me, and he takes wants to take physical advantage from me, and I don't want to be indulged in such things. However, Pamela uh, could have tempted, and then she may have uh, taken much advantage of the situation from Mr. B, but she does not do anything. And then when she leaves, but she has to come back because of because of uh, mm, some like cows and all. So she gets scared and she has to come back. So then Mr. B decides that Mr. B says that uh, I will fix your marriage with Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams. He is the Williams, as we have seen here in that's a Mr. William is a junior pastor. So he says that why don't you get married with this boy man? So that's she writes, and she writes to her parents that Mr. I'm not interested for Mr. Williams, and then this Mr. B manipulates the situation, and he also writes letter to Pamela's parents that your daughter is should be safe. So that is why I am sending her to Bedfordshire, Bedford Bedfordshire. I'm sending, and this is another estate, and he's the owner in our estate of Mr. B. And right now she is living in Lincoln, Lincolnshire, and that is also state, right? And then she works here, but from Lincolnshire she go to Bedfordshire, Bedfordshire. So he writes that I'm sending your daughter, your daughter is coming. So he just write, he sends one person with Pamela, that leave Pamela to her home. But instead of sending her home, Pamela has to go to Bedfordshire. And as she goes Bedfordshire, and then she meets she meets she meets N or Nen. N or Nen is same, just like her a younger daughter. So she is there, but at the same time she meets that Mrs. Jarvis, Mrs. Jarvis, and she is very cruel. She is very cruel lady, and cruel to very cruel and very rude to Miss Pamela. So Pamela is gets hurt, but she could not do anything. And then finally Pamela has to surrender, and she starts working there in Bedfordshire. Now what happened that Pamela uh, mm, is doing like Mrs. Jarvis puts condition that Pamela has to share a bed with Mrs. Jarvis. And why? Because Mrs. Jarvis supports Mr. B, and Mr. B shares everything with Mrs. Jarvis. So she supports Mr. B, and she gives opportunity so that Mr. B takes advantage of the situation. And one day, that's in the same bed, that's Mrs. Jarvis and Pamela, they were sleeping. And then Mrs. Jarvis one day, she leaves bed, and um, where Mr. B comes and disguises himself as Nain, and he sleeps along with Pamela. But as Pamela realizes, and she faints, and then as she faints, then Mr. B realizes that no, something went wrong. And then she cries like anything, and she decides that every whatever okay, in the meanwhile what happened, she starts sending letter to parents, which is stopped by Mrs. Jukas. So she meets one person, that's a Mr. Williams. And then she say Mr. William, and he helps Pamela a lot, and he says that I am ready to do anything for you. So Pamela and Mr. Williams, Pamela keeps the letter in the tree, right, somewhere. And then from there he picks up the William picks up the letter, and he sends to parents. And this is going on for some time. But what happened that one day she caught red-handed, and then Mrs. Jarvis says that uh, you write your parents, uh, like despite warning, you write your parent you write letters to your parent. And then she says that it's too much now, and then I have to go. So then one day when she is very much stubborn, and finally she says that, because one day she tries to go from she gets up in the boundary, but she falls from there and she gets injured. Then Mr. B thinks that I should make her free, and she should reach to her home. So that Pamela is on the way. She is just reaching at home. But then she gets one letter from Mr. B in which it is written that she comes to know that Mr. B is sick. So then she realizes her mistake, and somewhere first time she feels that she's also starting loving with this man, and she's in love with Mr. B. So she comes back to Bedfordshire, and then she realizes, and then they meet, and he promises that though my sister will not get agree, but I am going to get married with you. But she thinks, because she does not she could not trust on this man, Mr. B. So she says that no, you just want to take my physical pleasure, and that's why you are just promising, you are not going to do married with me, going to marry with me. And then Mr. B says that no, I am ready. And then after long discussion she gets agree, and both she says that clean the chapel, and then secretly they get married. But as they get married, in the beginning no one from the society, Mr. B's society, is ready to accept Pamela as a daughter-in-law, because she is, after all, she is maid of this house, and how one can accept. And Lady Davos, Mr. B's sister, is not at all ready to accept her as a sister-in-law. And then but this is true. And then they have got married, and soon after the marriage, same day Mr. B has to go to take care of one person. So he leaves home. And here Mrs. Lady Davis she tortures she tortures Pamela. And then she says that, that Mr. B has one illegal daughter. Her name is that's a Miss Goodwin, and she is Godfrey's daughter, illegal daughter, with my brother Mr. B. So then here Pamela shows her great heart, and that's a she accept this girl, Miss Goodwin, and she says that no problem. And then she takes care of everyone, and she does not forget those who helped Pamela in her bedtime. And then as she becomes owner of both the states, so she takes care of parents are very happy now, and they shift to near Pamela's home. And then Pamela takes care of all the servants who helped her. And then this way Pamela proves herself because of her calm and composed nature, and then because of her jolly nature, positive nature. And then people start loving Pamela, and Pamela becomes very good. So here at the end of the novel, editor adds that Pamela is blessed to have 5 6 children, and she is settled in her life. And this novel's subtitle is Virtue Rewarded. Yes, virtue rewarded, because Pamela, though she comes from below middle class, but she proves herself as a good daughter, as a good daughter-in-law, as a good wife. Why? Because of her nurturing. And she proves that uh, just the Mr. B from elite class, and she's just from below middle class. But this is all something this is culture, uh, this is values she carries, and that is why she proved that virtue rewarded. And this way novel ends. Now moving to next novel, that is Pride and Prejudice, very short. Pride and Prejudice is written by, of course, Jane Austen, and Jane Austen does not could not get married, but then she has written she has she does commentary on social status of that time, and this is early fiction. Pamela and Pride and Prejudice, early fiction, but that's a very beautiful worldwide famous fiction, Pride and Prejudice, where two families are there. Bennett family, number of characters are there actually, not two family. Bennett family, then Bingley family, then Darcy family, number of members. We are going to meet here in Darcy, and then Mr. Wickham, and then next family is Lady Catherine D. Berg, and Lucas family, where William and Lady Lucas, and they have one daughter Charlotte. So who is in Bennett family? Here five daughters are there. First one is Jane, Elizabeth, middle one is Mary, fourth one is Catherine, and fifth one is Lydia. These were the five daughters, and they live. And what happened, the setting is Netherfield Park, and which is situated in Longbourn. And what happened, one day Charles Bingley, along with his two sisters two sisters are Caroline Bingley and Mr. and Mrs. Hurst. Mrs. Hurt is Charles Bingley's elder sister, and she is married, and she is with her husband. They all shift along with Charles Bingley's best friend, Fitzwilliam Darcy. So they all shift to Netherfield Park. Netherfield Park, yes. But here what happened, that Bennet family, Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. Mrs. Bennet is very raw kind of lady, matured, and her only aim is to get to do her daughter's marriage in a good family, because at that time when you get you want to improve your social status, so females has to do a marriage in a good family, rich family. So her purpose, Mrs. Janet Bennett's purpose is that she wants to marry all daughters in a very good rich families. So that what happened, as she comes to know that in her neighborhood, their neighborhood, in the Netherfield Park, one person, Charles Bingley, along with all family members, they have come. And Mr. Charles Bingley is a very handsome fellow, and they have come near to their home. So she pressurizes Mr. B that you should visit to Mr. Charles Bingley's home. Mr. Bennet does not want to go, but because of pressure, he has to visit Charles Bingley's home, where he meets all family members, Caroline Bingley and Mr. and Mrs. Hurst and Fitzwilliam Darcy. So then this meeting, then at that time source of entertainment was library. So Mr. Charles Bingley shows library in his house, and Mr. Bennet become very happy, and he comes back and he shares with Mrs. Bennet that that's a boy is a very handsome and good natured and everything. Now that one evening there was dance party in community hall, so where all family members different from different society, they come, and youngsters, they start dancing and all. So as Mr. Charles Bingley sees Jane Bennet, and he gets attracted and he offers for dancing. So Jane is ready to dance, and then Jane and Charles Bingley, they start dancing. here and they enjoy, both are enjoying in dancing. But Elizabeth, number two daughter, she's the heroine of Pride and Prejudice, she's just sitting and she was watching everyone. But then after some time, Charles Bingley comes to Fitzwilliam Darcy, his good friend, and he says that why don't you dance with Elizabeth? She is Jane's younger sister, and she's very good girl. So that what happened, Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy says that no, I don't like her because they are from middle class, and I don't like because Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy is very rich fellow. And this conversation, that's a Elizabeth listens this their conversation, and she gets annoyed, and she refuses this boy, and then onwards she becomes prejudiced for Mr. for Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. And then, after dancing and after some time, that's a Caroline Bingley, she invites Jane to her home. And Jane goes, but takes horse and she goes Mr. Bingley's home. But due to rainy day, she becomes wet, and that's why she becomes sick. So she has to stay in Netherfield Park for some time. So here, as and that Elizabeth comes to know that her sister, because they have very good, they are very friendly to each other, Jane and Elizabeth. So as she comes to know that my sister is sick, so she has to go to Charles Bingley's home. And then as she reaches the Netherfield Park, so on the way what happened, that's on the way, that's a rainy season, that day also rainy season, and her dress skirt is muddy. And then as she reaches Bingley's home, so Caroline sees that Elizabeth's skirt is muddy, and then she like not misbehave, but she does not attend Elizabeth properly. And but Elizabeth does not bother, she does not think, does not mind. And then she goes upstairs where Jane is taking rest, and she talks and she start taking care of Jane. Jane is feverish and headache. Jane has a headache also, so she starts taking care of Jane. And all the family members, other family members, they are sitting in a hall, and she is upstairs, Elizabeth and so then Caroline takes opportunity. Caroline grabs opportunity and she talks Fitzwilliam Darcy, Charles Bingley's friend. And then Caroline Bingley wants to talk, and she says that how Elizabeth just now she came and she's sitting upstairs. She should have sit with all of us. And this way she starts criticizing Elizabeth. But Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy does not speak anything in response, and he keeps quiet. And then as after 2-3 days, as Jane recovers, and they go back, they come to know that Mr. Collins is the uh, cousin uh, of Mr. Bennet. So he visited to Bennet family. So here now she's recovered. Miss Jane is recovered. So that's Miss Jane and Elizabeth. They come back to their home, and where they meet Mr. Collins. And Mr. Collins is a funny kind of fellow, and he comes to take chance so that he can get married with one of the Bennet family's daughter, because at that time property was inherited to male member only. So he thinks that if I get married one of the daughters, Bennett daughters, so this property will be inherited to me. And this was the temptation. But and Mrs. B is very much interested that my first daughter is going to get settled with Charles Bingley, but my second daughter should get married with uh, Elizabeth. Second daughter is Elizabeth, should get married with Mr. Collins. So she pressurized and tried to talk Miss Elizabeth, but Elizabeth immediately refuses because she does not like Mr. Collins. But then Mr. Bennet becomes very happy because even he does not want to see Elizabeth with Mr. Collins. He does not like Mr. Collins. Anyway, Mr. Collins finds that Elizabeth is not interested in Mr. Collins, so he does not bother. And then Elizabeth Elizabeth's one best friend, Charlotte, Charlotte Lucas, Charlotte Lucas, and she is 29 year, and she as Mr. Collins goes to Charlotte for marriage. She becomes ready because she thinks that I am 29 and this is already late, so I should get married with Mr. Collins, and they settle in London now. Up here, what happened uh, one day, Jane and Elizabeth receives one letter from Caroline Bingley, that we all are going to London forever. Now we will not come back. As this message is received by Elizabeth, she imagines that this is done by William Darcy, because we are from middle class and my sister is from middle class, and that's why out of jealousy he does not want to see Miss Jane and Charles Bingley together, and that's why he must have told something to Charles Bingley. And then they shifted to London. Now there is no connectivity. Then what happened, that one day she Jane is very much upset, so that they decide, Jane and Elizabeth, they decide that they should go to their uncle, maternal uncle, Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner. Gardiner. They live in London. So then Jane is very upset. So Jane and Elizabeth decide to go to Mr. Gardiner's home for some time. As they go, and then then Jane tries to find it out any opportunity so that she can meet Mr. Charles Bingley. And then here they come the they Mr. Bingley comes to know, and he visits to Gardiner, and then they start meeting. And then Mrs. Gardiner and Mr. Gardiner, in the meanwhile, they go to one estate which belongs to Mr. William Darcy, very big bungalow, and they visit. And then as they visit, and then their servant, Mr. Darcy's servant, are well mannered, and they attend Mrs. Gardiner, Mr. Gardiner, and Elizabeth. All are attended very well, and they are welcomed very well. And then hospitality, very good hospitality was there. And this way Elizabeth becomes impressed. And then in the meanwhile, William Darcy comes to state, and then he behaves very nicely with everyone. But Elizabeth does not think anything for this man, and she's very normal because she's thinking for Jane and Charles Bingley. Anyway, Jane and Charles Bingley meet, and as they come to know that both the sister have come, and then Jane start meeting with sorry Charles Bingley meets with Jane, and then now they have again good friendship. And here what happened, then they are spending days with Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner, and one day they receive one letter that in which they come to know, both the sister come to know that uh, that Lydia, the youngest daughter of Bennet family, she has no, in the meanwhile what happened, that mm, they visit uh, they sometime they visit to army camp, and where she meets who Elizabeth meets Mr. Wickham. So Mr. Wickham is a soldier, so that as she meets Mr. Wickham, and Mr. Wickham tells Wickham tells negative about Fitzwilliam Darcy, that he tells one story that when my father was alive and I was very young, and then Fitzwilliam Darcy's father promised to give us one part of their land, little part of their land, but then as he dies, and Fitzwilliam Darcy, he does not come fulfill the promise, and he is very tempted, and he is a greedy kind of man, so that Elizabeth gets more irritated with Fitzwilliam Darcy. Anyway, and then one day when Elizabeth meets Fitzwilliam Darcy in his estate, and then she does not behave properly with Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. However, Fitzwilliam Darcy tries to make it clear all the misunderstandings, so that, but she does not bother, and then she starts speaking against Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, that you are this kind of man, and you are cheater, and your father promised to Mr. Wickham's father, but you did not fulfill a promise, and many things. Then he tries to convince Elizabeth, but he could not. Then he writes one letter in which, one by one, he makes everything clear that no, it was Mr. Wickham is very cunning fellow, and Mr. Wickham was interested to get married with my sister Georgiana Wickham, right? So he was interested with my sister, but when my sister was not ready, and then he becomes annoyed, and he tries to take advantage of my sister, and this way Mr. Wickham is very cunning fellow, and a very pompous kind of man. Then she realizes, and then but then she is not much happy with Fitzwilliam Darcy. Anyway, in the meanwhile, they were spending their time. Jane and Elizabeth were spending their time with their uncle and aunt, Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner, and they are enjoying also. And then all of a sudden, they come to know that through letter they come to know that their youngest sister, Lydia. So then she has Lydia. So that this Lydia has left home with Mr. Wickham, and they are living somewhere without marriage. And it was taboo for the society at that time. It was very very worrisome situation. So Mr. Bennet comes to Mr. Gardiner, and then they start searching to Lydia and Mr. Wickham, but they could not get succeed, and then they give up, and all of a sudden one day they come to know that Mr. Lydia and Mr. Wickham has demanded for huge money, and then if money is given to him, then he is ready to get married with Lydia. So then after some time, matter was solved, and they have got married. So then she is Elizabeth and Jane, they become happy. And now here Jane and Mr. Charles Bingley, they are also going to get married. And then Elizabeth comes back to home, but then she comes to know that that money was given by Fitzwilliam Darcy silently without speaking anything. Then she realizes that Mr. Darcy is very good human being. That was the time, but then he spoke this way. But then he is a very good person, gentleman, because she has heard about through servants also. And then she realizes her mistake, that since long time she is not behaving properly, though Fitzwilliam Darcy is now very good to Elizabeth. Then she then without wasting time, as she realizes that. And then Mr. Phil William Darcy proposes her, and once he proposes, then she refuses. But now this time she accepts, and now at the end of the novel, we see three couples are there. That's Jane and three couples are there. And Jane and Charles Bingley, and then Elizabeth and Darcy, right? And then Lydia, Lydia and Wickham. So then this is happy ending, and they all have got married. So thank you so much. This is the these are the two novels. Now we are going to discuss two more novels, that is Victorian novels, The Mayor of Casterbridge and A Tale of Two Cities, in next video. Thank you so much. Bye.